The truth has no mercy. The hall didn't just go quiet. It died. Every conversation, every clinking glass, every rustling fabric, swallowed whole by a silence so thick it had weight, the kind that sits on your chest and dares you to breathe. And standing right at the center of it all was Miriam. No bal, no flowers, no apology in her eyes, just two little girls gripping her hands like anchors, and a woman who had decided that today was the day. Lena's smile didn't fall all at once. It left in stages, the way daylight leaves before a storm. First the warmth, then the brightness, then everything. She turned slowly toward Daniel. What is she talking about? Her voice was barely above a whisper. But in that silence, a whisper was deafening. Daniel didn't answer. And that was his first confession. Miriam took one step forward, unhurried, unshaking, and she raised the document she brought out from her purse to show Lena and everyone at the venue as proof of their marriage. A marriage she has sacrificed her all, not knowing it was built on lie and deceit. Daniel and I have been married, she said, for 8 years. The gasps hit like a wave. Chairs scraped. Hands flew to mouths. Phones, because of course, slowly lifted into the air. And these girls, she glanced down at her daughters, her voice softening just slightly, are his. The older daughter looked straight ahead. The younger one leaned into her mother's side. Lena turned back to Daniel. Her eyes were doing the thing eyes do when the mind hasn't caught up yet. Scanning, searching, reaching for an exit that doesn't exist. Tell me she's lying, Daniel. Not a demand. A plea. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. And that silence, God, that silence, answered her better than any words ever could. You told me your family lived abroad. Lena's voice was trembling now, unraveling at the edges. You said you had no past worth talking about. You looked me in my eyes and said, she stopped, pressed her lips together. You said I was the only one. Miriam didn't move, didn't react. She didn't need to. She had lived this moment in her head for 3 weeks. She had rehearsed her rage and buried it. What was left was something far more dangerous than anger. Clarity. I was going to tell you, he finally said. Weak, hollow. The words of a man reaching for anything. Miriam tilted her head. When, Daniel? A pause. After the wedding? The room flinched. Someone actually gasped out loud. A sharp sound, like a pin dropping into absolute silence. Lena laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that lives just next door to tears. Bitter, broken, and completely beyond her control. So I was just... She shook her head slowly. A fresh start. A clean page. Like the first one never happened. No, Lena, listen to me. She raised her hand. One gesture. And it stopped him completely. All 6 feet of him, frozen mid-step, by one raised hand from a woman in a wedding dress. Don't. The younger daughter, 5 years old, had been watching Lena with wide, curious eyes. The way children do when they sense that something important is happening, even if they can't name it. She tugged Miriam's hand and looked up at Lena. Are you the lady Daddy was going to marry? Simple words. Innocent mouth. Absolutely devastating. Lena's eyes flooded instantly. She didn't try to stop it. She looked at the child. This little girl who had done nothing wrong, who knew nothing, who was just curious about the lady in the pretty white dress. Then she looked at Miriam, and something cracked open inside her chest. You didn't know either? Lena asked quietly. Miriam shook her head. I found out 3 weeks ago. She exhaled slowly. I spent a week crying. Then I spent 2 weeks planning. She looked around the decorated hall. The flowers, the fairy lights, the wedding favors on every table. I wanted him to be somewhere he couldn't spin a story. Somewhere the truth had witnesses. Her eyes swept back to Daniel. And here we are. Guests weren't whispering anymore. They were watching openly, the way people watch a building come down. Horrified, riveted, unable to look away. The groomsmen stood in a useless row, hands clasped, eyes anywhere but Daniel's face. The mothers, both of them, sat motionless in the front rows, wearing the same stunned expression. Daniel was still talking, still reaching, I can fix this. If you let me explain. No, Lena's voice had changed. The trembling was gone. What replaced it was something quieter and so much stronger. You can't fix this, Daniel. You can't explain this. You just are this. She looked down at her hand, at the diamond that had caught the light every time she moved, that she had photographed in sunsets, that her mother had cried when she saw it. Then she looked at Miriam, a woman who had worn a ring from this same man, who had built a life, raised children, kept a home, while Daniel had been building a second one on top of her, like she was just a foundation he didn't want to credit. That was enough. Lena pulled the ring off slowly. The hall held its breath. Every single person frozen. I won't marry a man who lies like this. Her voice was steady, certain. And I won't become someone else's wound. She placed the ring into Daniel's open palm. His fingers closed around it slowly, like he was holding the last piece of something that was already gone. Miriam had turned to leave. Her daughters close beside her, heels quiet against the floor. She was almost at the door. Then she stopped. Not for Daniel. She was finished with Daniel. She turned back, and found Lena's eyes across the length of that hall. Across the guests, the flowers, the ruins of an afternoon that was supposed to be a celebration. Two women, one dress, one man who had tried to own them both. You deserved better than this, Miriam said. Not loudly, not for the room, just for Lena. Then she walked out. No looking back. Just two little girls and a woman who had walked through fire and chosen dignity over destruction. The doors closed. The hall was still. And he stood there, in his tailored suit, with his boutonniere and his practiced smile and his entire carefully constructed life, holding a ring that no longer meant anything. Not a groom, not a husband, not even a story worth telling. Just a man whose lies had finally grown tall enough to cast a shadow he couldn't outrun. The drive home was quiet. Miriam kept both hands on the steering wheel. The afternoon sun was low and warm through the windshield, spilling gold across the dashboard like it had no idea what kind of day this had been. Zoe had fallen asleep within 10 minutes, her cheek pressed against the window, a crayon still tucked in her braids from a drawing she had started that morning and never finished. Kayla sat with her hands in her lap, watching the road. After a long while she said, "Mummy, are we going to be okay?" Miriam glanced at her in the mirror. Her 7-year-old daughter with her steady eyes and her 2 old questions and her quiet, stubborn habit of holding herself straight even when everything around her was tilting. "Yes," Miriam said, simply, certainly. Not because she knew exactly how. Not because the road ahead was clear or easy or mapped out in any way she could point to, but because she had walked into that hall today carrying the heaviest thing she had ever carried, and she had walked out without dropping a single piece of herself. That counted for something. That counted for everything. Across the city, Lena sat on the floor of her apartment, still in the dress. She hadn't been able to take it off yet. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because taking it off meant the day was real. Maybe because she needed a few more minutes inside the version of herself who had put it on this morning, hopeful and certain and completely, heartbreakingly unaware. Kezia was on the floor beside her. Not talking. Just there, the way Kezia always was when it mattered, present and quiet and not asking Lena to perform being okay before she was ready. Her mother's pearl earrings were still in her ears. She reached up and took them off slowly, held them in her palm. You deserve this. You have always deserved this. Her mother had been right. Just not about Daniel. About herself. Lena set the earrings on the floor beside her. Looked at the empty space on her left hand where the ring used to catch the light. Then she took the first full breath she had taken all day. And she decided something. Quietly, privately, without telling anyone yet. That she was going to be all right. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually and completely and on her own terms. And Daniel? He was still in the parking lot. Still in the car. Still holding the ring. The reception venue would be calling soon. The caterers. The photographer. The people who had been paid to celebrate a day that no longer existed. He would have to answer for all of it. He would have to answer for a great many things, now that there was nowhere left to hide them. The sun was setting. and Daniel Chun sat alone in the wreckage of the life he had built, not realizing that the wreckage had always been there, underneath the polish, underneath the charm, underneath every perfectly chosen word and perfectly timed gesture. He had just been the last one to see it. Some men don't lose everything all at once. They spend years building the perfect life. 2 floors, 2 doors, 2 women who each believe they are the whole house. And the whole architecture comes down, not because it was weak, but because it was built on something that was never designed to hold weight. The lie was never the secret. The lie was believing the secret was permanent. Miriam knew. Lena deserved to know. And Daniel finally ran out of the one thing he had always had in abundance. Time. The end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe and share to others. Also leave a comment to share your thought about the story.